It is inadvisable to rely on ancestry kits for paternity tests. If one wishes to confirm one's child's parentage, it is preferable to undertake a proper paternity test at a local medical laboratory. Ancestry tests are not accurate and should never be used to determine paternity. In my case, the results of the ancestry test raised concerns that led to a legitimate test being undertaken. My life has been turned upside down in the past few weeks, and I am seeking to provide as much context as possible to obtain the most appropriate advice. However, I am not yet ready to discuss this matter with my wife's parents or siblings. I met my wife in high school, and we were married during our college years. We have 5 children, aged 33, 30, 28, 24, and 14. Despite the information I am about to share, I consider them a true blessing. Until a couple of weeks ago, I believed we had a perfect marriage. We were high school sweethearts and went out together. We rarely had any arguments, and I felt like I was doing everything a loving husband should do. However, I do not intend to portray myself as a perfect spouse. I have had long working hours and may not have always been there when my wife needed me. Nevertheless, I want to emphasize that I had never considered that our marriage was in trouble. I had never even suspected my wife of being unfaithful. She had consistently supported me and taken care of our children. However, my oldest daughter recently conducted an ancestry test, the results of which strongly suggested that I was not her biological father. She shared this information with me privately, showing me the results. I could see how emotional she was. My initial reaction was to reassure her that, regardless of the outcome, she was still my daughter and that I would always love her. We then decided to get an official paternity test. Due to the inherent unreliability of ancestry tests, the results confirmed that I am not the biological father. This news was profoundly distressing. I am ashamed to admit that I became emotionally overwhelmed and shed tears in front of my daughter. This was a combination of discovering my wife's infidelity and my emotional reaction, which deeply upset my daughter. I wish I had been able to maintain composure for her sake, but I was unable to do so. I subsequently gathered my other children, with the exception of the youngest, to have a discussion. I was motivated by a desire to understand the extent of my wife's infidelity. I was particularly interested in determining whether it was a one-time occurrence or a more sustained pattern. The passage of time may allow for a more constructive approach, particularly given the length of time that may have elapsed since the incident. However, I did not believe it was appropriate to involve my youngest child, who is still in school and a teenager. Instead, I chose to share the situation with the other 3 children and reassured them of my unconditional love. I informed them that I will always be their father, but I needed to ascertain the duration of this situation. Their response was profoundly moving. They were not concerned with the biological aspect, they were simply distressed to see how heartbroken I was. Their unwavering support has been a source of strength for me in the past couple of weeks. We underwent paternity tests for each of the 3 children. The children were not biologically mine. They have 3 different fathers. This revelation made the situation even worse. It was not just one ongoing affair, it was multiple. The reasons for this are unclear, but it does make the situation feel more devastating. I confronted my wife about this, expecting her to confess and seek forgiveness. However, she neither confessed nor took it seriously. She claimed the tests must be flawed, and she dismissed all 4 of them. I continued to bring it up, and she became increasingly annoyed with me. She even tried to use guilt to manipulate me, saying things like, "We've been together since high school." Given the overwhelming evidence, it is difficult to comprehend how I can trust my wife when she has been untruthful. I would like to ask a few direct questions for advice. How can I reassure my children that this does not change anything between us? Despite my repeated reassurances, my emotional breakdowns have made them doubt this. How should I handle my youngest daughter? It seems that our marriage is beyond repair, and I will eventually have to tell her something I do not want her to know. The truth should not be revealed until she is older, but I also do not want my wife to lie and paint me as the villain. Is there any way at all to save my marriage? I have been with my wife for a long time. My entire life has been spent with her, and it is challenging to envision a life without her. I am aware that the straightforward answer may be to terminate the relationship, but we have 5 children together. Therefore, I am motivated to explore the possibility of salvaging our marriage, based on the advice provided in this thread. Consequently, I have decided to take the following steps. It is possible that a misunderstanding or error has occurred. I will confront my wife with all 4 of my older children present. I will discuss the situation with my youngest and offer her the choice of having a paternity test. She will have the final decision. I will seek therapy. My mental state has been declining over the past few weeks. It is my obligation to my children to maintain composure, contingent upon whether my wife is forthcoming and provides an explanation, if any. I have not discounted the possibility of counseling, but at this juncture, I believe divorce is a near certainty unless she undergoes a significant shift in attitude, consults with an attorney, and prepares for the possibility of divorce. I would like to express my gratitude once again to all of you for taking the time to offer your support and advice to address some questions that have arisen. Could you please clarify how the ancestry results suggested that I was not the father? My family is entirely of Irish descent, and we have no relatives outside of Ireland except for my immediate family. I also possess the stereotypical red hair. However, my daughter's ancestry results demonstrated no connection to the British Isles, Western Europe, or Northern Europe. This raised concerns, although it is not conclusive. Hence, the paternity tests, which revealed that 2 children share the same father. My 2 eldest daughters share the same father. How did this occur? Your wife became pregnant with your children. Our eldest daughter was not planned, while all the others were. We conceived each time several months after actively trying. Our first 3 children were a mutual decision, but our youngest was a result of my wife's desire for one more child in her late 30s. Eventually, I agreed to it. She was conceived several months after we initiated efforts to conceive. Might I inquire as to whether you have experienced infertility? I am uncertain. I have not undergone a fertility test. However, the fact that none of our planned children are biologically mine leads me to hypothesize that I might be infertile. I will undergo a fertility test as soon as possible. Update: after posting, my children and I confronted the mother of the children in question did not receive a positive response to her assertion that she was not infertile. This was evidenced by her emotional state, which appeared to indicate that she was aware that nobody believed her. She expressed remorse and apologized profusely, yet she did not provide any explanations or seek to achieve closure. There was a notable decline in communication between her and me over the following weeks. I anticipated that she might eventually reveal more, but this did not occur. I considered the possibility that she had been caught in a web of deceit. The situation rapidly deteriorated, necessitating a period of reflection and recovery. However, this did not occur. One evening, I returned home to a devastating discovery: my partner had taken her own life. I lost the love of my life and will never know the truth about her actions. I wish I could undo this tragedy and forget about it all, regardless of her. I genuinely wanted to work things out, yet I am now burdened with guilt for pushing her for answers. The most painful aspect of this entire ordeal was seeing my children trying so hard to support me despite the loss of their mother. Therefore, it is crucial to express your love for your family while you still can. Story 2: 10 years ago, my wife began seeing another man and removed me from our marital residence. Our relationship was not optimal, but I was unprepared for the sudden deterioration. I was served with a protection order that prohibited me from returning home or seeing my children without written permission from my wife. This order lasted for 90 days, which significantly impacted my well-being. A family member introduced me to a skilled lawyer who was highly intelligent and straightforward. She filed a response to the protection order but cautioned me that these legal processes are time-consuming and that we might not have the opportunity to appear before a judge within the 90-day period. She emphasized the importance of adhering to the court order in its entirety, citing the potential for significant challenges if there were any indications of non-compliance. Given the imminent renewal of the order within a single day, I was staying at a friend's residence due to a lack of alternative arrangements. We had agreed that I would supervise the children at our house. I waited nearby until I received an email from her, during which I reiterated the court order and my intention not to comply. In the absence of written authorization, the aforementioned incident occurred on 2 additional occasions during the initial 7-day period. Consequently, I informed her that I would remain in my current location until I received the requisite written permission, which was approximately 20 minutes away. I even sent her a text message the following day, reminding her of the arrangement. However, she once again failed to provide the necessary written permission. We had planned for me to collect the children and transport them to their educational institution, which was in close proximity to my place of employment. However, due to the lack of written authorization, I was unable to do so within the allotted time frame. The children were not taken to school and I did not arrive at work on time. I informed her of the court order and that I was out of time. As a result, she was significantly late for work that day. She wanted to give me blanket permission to come and go as needed, but my lawyer advised against it, emphasizing that I should stick to the court order. The culmination of this situation occurred a few weeks later when she once again forgot to send me permission. Her boyfriend was staying over at the residence, but he did not have his vehicle. It subsequently emerged that he was the ex-wife's direct supervisor at her place of work. She was therefore obliged to call a colleague to collect the children and take them to school. The colleague eventually became aware of the situation. This information rapidly spread throughout the workplace. By the end of the first week, the boyfriend had been dismissed from his position due to the relationship between him and the ex-wife. By that time, I had established my own accommodation. Consequently, on most days, the children were left with me. I subsequently discovered that the boyfriend had suggested the protection order. My wife was displeased to discover that the incident provided evidence that I was not a threat to her or the family. The judge admonished her for it when we settled on support and parenting time. She characterized it as intentional and harmful parental alienation. This is the second part of a decade-long story that is now coming to fruition. I have always maintained a respectful and polite demeanor towards my boyfriend, who became my stepfather through marriage. However, I harbored a desire to retaliate against him. I initially considered a minor act of vengeance, but he presented me with an opportunity that I seized. I have been capitalizing on this opportunity for nearly 3 weeks. My children are now at various stages of their academic careers. Some are in college, while others are in either the 11th or 12th grade. The college students reside with me, while the high schoolers alternate between their mother's residence and mine. I am also remarried. My wife and I each possess our own vehicles, but she owns and ensures that we have access to a minivan when we all need to travel together. The children can utilize it as well. As only one of the vehicles is equipped with a functioning ignition, it is necessary to utilize the other vehicle. However, there is only one set of keys, which presents a potential security risk. To mitigate this risk, an AirTag was attached to the vehicle. This device is designed to track the vehicle's location in case the keys are misplaced. Approximately 3 weeks ago, one of the older children took the vehicle for an extended period. However, he ultimately returned to his mother's residence, where he remained on the couch until approximately 7 p.m. Monday the following day. Another child requested the use of the vehicle. Upon examination of the AirTag, it became evident that the vehicle was situated in an industrial zone of an alternative municipality. This prompted concern regarding the reason for the child's presence at this location. A telephone conversation with the child revealed that he was, in fact, at his mother's residence, as previously stated. He was unaware of the vehicle's disappearance. The police were promptly informed of the vehicle's location. Within 20 minutes, the authorities had intercepted the vehicle and the driver had admitted to using it without permission. This information was surprising as it involved my former spouse. The police did not appear to be particularly interested in detaining the individual, as it would be more convenient for him to drive the van back to our town and address the matter there. However, he was not the owner of the vehicle nor listed as a driver on the insurance, so I insisted that it be impounded in Canada. While we cannot press charges, I was determined to pursue this as theft and not let it slide, given that the individual was out of town with no means of transportation. Ultimately, the police did detain him, likely because it was more convenient for them. I obtained the information for that the vehicle was impounded in the yard where it was stored since both my wife and I were scheduled to be off work the following day. My wife and I drove to the location to retrieve it. Upon arrival, I first inspected the exterior for any visible damage. It appeared to be sitting lower than usual, but there were no apparent external signs of damage. However, upon opening the vehicle, I discovered that it was loaded with industrial fasteners and cables similar to those used for seismic mitigation. It became evident that the boyfriend had used my wife's van to transport materials for his work. My wife immediately confronted him. I proceeded to walk towards the office and my wife had to jog to catch up with me. She inquired with the individuals at the gate regarding the individuals with access to the van. They informed her that only my wife and I had access, as they were the only ones in possession of the keys. I grasped the import of her inquiry and informed them that no other individuals should be permitted to access the van. I then provided a gratuity of $35 and they reassured me that they would secure the van by relocating it to a locked area within the premises. We subsequently returned home without the van, as we had not yet done so upon our initial departure. The drive was lengthy. Upon receiving the initial text message from the boyfriend regarding the retrieval of the equipment from the van, I informed him that we had left the van at the impound lot due to the financial implications, including towing, impound fees, and daily storage. I made it clear that he needed to pay these costs upfront before I would consider releasing the van. He became visibly upset and swore that he would reimburse me, but I firmly declined his offer. Within an hour, I received a call from his boss, who urgently needed the equipment. I informed the boss that the vehicle had been impounded and that I would not be able to retrieve it until the following week. I reiterated that payment had to be made in advance. The boss began using harsh language, but I calmly explained that I had not stolen the vehicle to transport their equipment. When he continued to be disrespectful, I told him I would not tolerate the abuse and ended the call. I then blocked him and his company on all the platforms where I could be reached. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I have managed to the boyfriend attempted to arrange for the vehicle's retrieval on numerous occasions. Frequently, the reason provided was that the children required transportation, necessitating my assistance. The boss attempted to contact me via various telephone numbers and sent multiple emails, which I chose to ignore. However, I did respond once to clarify that the round trip would require approximately 4 hours for both my wife and me, and that the payment had to be made in advance. The costs included $125 per day for secure storage, towing and impound fees, among other expenses. Additionally, we sought reimbursement for the fuel used by the boyfriend as well as our travel expenses. We had previously agreed on the standard rate of 58 cents per kilometer. The boss sent an e-transfer to cover the total cost of our trips. By this point, the van had made 1 trip and our car had made 2, totaling almost $1,600. Finally, on Friday, the various elements came together. My wife and I drove over to pick up the van, which we had already prepaid for. It was ready to be released when I grabbed the keys. I also dropped off a dozen beers at the office as a gesture of goodwill. I then made a gesture of goodwill. However, I had no intention of transporting the boss and boyfriend's equipment. Instead, I arranged for it to be stored at the yard with the same storage rate as a vehicle. I had it unloaded and left just before the yard closed for the weekend. Shortly after, I received a call from the boyfriend asking when he could come with a work truck to collect the equipment. I informed him that it was still at the impound lot, which was almost 2 hours away. Furthermore, I explained that the office would only be open on Monday at 9 o'clock. The time was 12 a.m. Monday at 9 a.m. There was no response, so I terminated the call after approximately 10 seconds. Throughout this entire episode, I have been intermittently updated by my former partner, with whom I now have a cordial relationship. She was enraged with her boyfriend and made it clear to me that any repercussions were entirely his responsibility. He managed to retain his employment, but he will not be eligible for the next salary increase or his annual bonus. In a final communication, my former partner indicated that their workplace was experiencing a significant shortage of personnel, which contributed to the decision not to terminate his employment. However, he continues to face challenges both at home and at work. There has been no indication as to whether criminal charges will be filed against him for the theft of the vehicle, a decision that will ultimately be made by the legal authorities. I am not pursuing a civil lawsuit. A third account, 7 years ago, I was married to Mai. By that point, we had been together for 6 years. I considered our relationship to be exceptional. I had recently received a sizable inheritance which I used to purchase a condominium for us to live in. I also purchased a new vehicle as a gesture of gratitude for her unwavering support over the years and invested the remainder in starting my own company. I believe that we were deeply in love and had numerous discussions about starting a family ensued as both parties expressed a desire to have children. Upon returning home from work, I was greeted by my partner, who gestured for me to join her on the couch. She then made a surprising announcement: she was pregnant. Initially, I was overjoyed, but the reality of the situation soon became apparent. The impossibility of her being pregnant was evident, given that we were both cisgender women. She began to cry and apologized, suggesting that this could be a positive turn of events for us. I was incredulous and asked how this could possibly be a good thing. She explained that it might be the perfect opportunity for us to have the family we had always dreamed of. I lacked the energy to argue at that moment, so I packed a few things and told her I needed some time to think. I informed her that I required a few days to stay with my cousin before returning to discuss the matter further. During that week, I was in a state of complete emotional distress at my cousin's residence. Upon my return, I informed her of my intention to seek a divorce. I proceeded to pack the remaining items in my possession, while she pleaded that she was unable to proceed without me and accused me of abandoning our child. I remained silent and was unable to muster the strength to. During the divorce proceedings, I permitted my former spouse to retain possession of the condominium, despite the fact that it had been purchased with my inheritance. I also transferred ownership of my vehicle, which was registered in my name, to her. She demanded alimony, and despite being ineligible for it, I agreed to pay it for a year. She also requested child support, but that request was denied for reasons that were clear to me. A year later, the divorce was finalized approximately 1 month before the official conclusion of the proceedings. I initiated a relationship with another woman, despite my initial reservations. My friends encouraged me to pursue the relationship, and we gradually developed a connection. I eventually shared details of my past with her, and she expressed sympathy for my situation. We went on dates and shared physical affection, but then, abruptly, she ceased responding to my texts. I was perplexed and concerned about the lack of communication for a week. My former partner arrived at my residence, visibly distressed, and abruptly revealed that she was pregnant. Initially, I was taken aback, but she promptly clarified that she had only recently learned of the development through a medical appointment, which had confirmed her estimated gestational age of approximately 16 weeks. She reassured me that she had not engaged in infidelity, given that our relationship had only spanned 3 months. She acknowledged the potential challenges this situation might pose for me and expressed how she expressed genuine fondness for me and understood if I wanted nothing to do with her. Ultimately, I could not bring myself to let her go, and we decided to stay together. Initially, the situation was somewhat confusing, but we managed to work through it. My company has been thriving for years. We have purchased a house, tied the knot, welcomed 2 more children, and welcomed a dog and a cat. Our families adore each other. However, last Saturday, my ex reappeared. We were at a family gathering on my wife's side when she unexpectedly showed up at my wife's aunt's house. Was the setting for a confrontation between my wife and her aunt. The purpose of the gathering was to expose me as a terrible person who abandoned my wife and our child to start a new family with someone else. My wife's aunt accused me of leaving them with nothing and not paying overdue child support. My wife's aunt became friends with my wife's cousin's wife during a PDA meeting. She shared my story and they decided to confront me during the family gathering. Their intention was to reveal evidence of my supposed wrongdoings to everyone. My wife tried to defend me, but her aunt, the cousin's mother, we were abruptly silenced and harshly removed from the gathering, with threats of public shaming and the ruination of my company. We departed the gathering in shock, and my wife was determined to pursue legal action against anyone who would slander me. On Sunday morning, my wife's father, the aunt's brother, called to discuss the texts and voicemails they had been receiving. They had not attended the gathering. We met for lunch and provided an explanation of the events that had transpired. They were aware of my previous divorce, but not the details. They demonstrated an understanding of the situation, but my mother, in the legal counsel, proposed that, given my financial resources, I should provide assistance to my former spouse in fulfilling her child support obligations, assist her in locating suitable housing if necessary, and serve as a parental figure in my former spouse's daughter's life. The rationale behind this recommendation was that the child in question was conceived during the marriage. Additionally, my former spouse's mother holds some unconventional spiritual beliefs. My wife is currently displeased with her mother for stating while the majority of the extended family supports our position, with the exception of one individual who is closely aligned with the cousin and believes his wife's account of events, we have chosen to refrain from engaging with the extended family drama for the time being. I have observed that many individuals have fixated on the fact that I gifted the condo to my former spouse. I understand this focus, but at that particular moment, I was experiencing a profound sense of despair and still held some affection for her. I felt compelled to eliminate all traces of our relationship, and thus I decided to transfer ownership of the condo to her, despite my lawyer's counsel to the contrary. My wife did not engage in infidelity. She had been involved with another individual for several weeks prior to our initial encounter. I met my spouse when we were first dating. 2 months later, she discovered that she was pregnant. We proceeded at a gradual pace and did not move in together immediately. We stayed together to observe the situation and see how things would unfold. The relationship could have ended at any point, but it did not. We moved in together when our child was almost a year old. My mother, my wife, has some rather unconventional spiritual beliefs that she shares with her friends. These beliefs have been a part of her life for a considerable period of time, and they have never caused me any significant concern. However, I do find some of her views to be questionable. I recently informed her that I had given my former spouse the condominium, and she responded by stating that she was unsure if my former spouse still retained possession of the property. Another individual suggested that my wife's decision to give the property to her former spouse might have been influenced by her knowledge of my former spouse's infidelity. It is possible that her siblings are a product of that situation. However, I am not currently in a position to discuss this with my wife or anyone else. I will provide an overview of the events that have transpired thus far. I obtained copies of the divorce paperwork and presented them to my wife's family, allowing them to review the documentation. I received a range of responses from those involved. Some individuals expressed their belief that my ex-wife's actions were questionable, while others were more reserved in their opinions. From the outset, I considered my former partner to be mentally unstable. However, I refrained from commenting on this as I felt it was evident to others. Those who believed my former partner were equally as irrational, and therefore, any discussion would be futile. Nevertheless, they did express regret for not speaking up earlier. We were not particularly close, and they were merely extended relatives. Initially, others believed my former partner's claims. My former spouse, however, was not so readily convinced. After presenting the aforementioned documentation, she expressed remorse and indicated her willingness to provide legal assistance and serve as witnesses. Nevertheless, a subset of individuals, including my cousin, cousin's wife, aunt, and a few others within their inner circle, continue to doubt the veracity of my claims. They have even gone so far as to accuse me of document falsification. The lawyer who is closely associated with my cousin has not offered any commentary on the situation. He does not appear to be aligned with their perspective but has not acknowledged any missteps on his part. He has simply maintained silence. I filed for a restraining order, and while the temporary order was denied, a hearing has been scheduled for last week. I had a meeting with one of my most significant clients. We have had a professional relationship for an extended period, though we are not personal friends. He was aware of my divorce proceedings from years ago. When he arrived at the reception, I greeted him and escorted him to the meeting. However, he requested a brief conversation before we proceeded. An individual had visited his office and informed him that I had abandoned a child. He inquired as to the veracity of this claim. I informed him that it was untrue and provided him with a concise account of the events in question. I even offered to present him with my divorce papers. He stated that this was unnecessary and that he placed trust in my statements. He extended an offer of assistance should I require it in the future. We proceeded with the meeting. I was disconcerted that she had taken action against my business. However, an even more troubling incident occurred. My lawyer had been drafting a cease and desist letter, and I was deliberating whether to pursue legal action against her or await the letter's arrival. On Saturday, an unforeseen event transpired. I accompanied my children on a trip. We proceeded to the mall to purchase seasonal items. While my children's academic year has concluded, their educational institution maintains a schedule of activities, including a significant event scheduled for the following weekend. We required the purchase of various items for this event and other necessary supplies. My wife remained at home to rest, as her condition has recently deteriorated. Upon our return, I distributed the purchased items to the children and instructed them to enter the house, informing them that their mother had prepared a snack. I then proceeded to complete the remaining tasks. As I was nearing the conclusion of the unloading process, I heard a voice calling out, "Mommy." I turned to see a young girl standing nearby. I was perplexed, and the girl appeared frightened. I then observed my former partner approaching, and she informed the girl that she was indeed the individual in question. The girl remained silent for the remainder of the interaction, but my former partner began shouting at me. I am paraphrasing, but this is essentially how the conversation proceeded. My former partner expressed disbelief that I would not want to be in her daughter's life, emphasizing that she was an exceptional and innocent child who had done nothing wrong. She accused me of abandoning her for a random individual who became pregnant and made me responsible for the child. I responded by. My ex-partner attempted to justify her actions by claiming that she was not a random person. I highlighted the distinction between our situations, noting that the woman in question had not been unfaithful to me and that I had chosen to assume responsibility for the child without any external pressure. My ex-partner countered that this was not an equitable comparison and questioned my ability to integrate other children into our family while neglecting our daughter. I dismissed her arguments and requested that she leave. She persisted in accusing me of failing to consider our daughter's best interests, highlighting discrepancies in our children's educational experiences. In response, I accused her of my ex-wife's behavior was unreasonable and she was asked to leave the premises. She then threatened to call the police. She challenged the likelihood of me doing so and urged me to be reasonable at that moment. My wife emerged from the house and informed me that she had already called the police. She advised my ex to leave before they arrived and asked me to come inside. I grabbed the last 2 bags and went inside through the window. I saw my ex grabbing the little girl by her arm quite roughly and dragging her to her car. She then left. I am genuinely worried about the girl's safety. The police showed up and we talked to them. Furthermore, they viewed footage from our security cameras, including from my vehicle. I filed for a temporary restraining order, which was approved, which is a positive outcome for the time being. I informed my attorney that I no longer wish to pursue the cease and desist letter, as I intend to sue my former partner. I can confirm that she is aware of this intention. I currently reside in a condominium. I am uncertain as to the current status of the property or my former partner's current place of residence. I will provide an update in due course. I would like to take this opportunity to reiterate that my former partner has not visited my residence for several weeks. This is a positive development, although she did attend my place of work on Monday, seeking to make contact. I was not present at the time. I am currently working from home to assist my wife, who is on bed rest due to complications related to her pregnancy. I did, however, attend the office on Thursday. As I was departing for home, my ex's sister was awaiting my arrival. We had previously maintained a close relationship, but we terminated contact when the infidelity occurred. In accordance with the advice of my therapist, I met with my ex-wife at a nearby cafe. She informed me that she had been coming for several days, waiting outside in the hope of seeing me. She stated that she wished to discuss a matter of importance with me. During our meeting, she informed me of the activities my ex-wife had been engaged in since the dissolution of our marriage. She revealed that my ex-wife had sold the condominium approximately 1 year prior. 5 years after the divorce was finalized, she relocated to a rented house. She informed me that my ex-husband had suggested that it was a relatively quick way to generate income to purchase the necessary items for a child's upbringing. Over time, her family observed behaviors that were somewhat unusual. I will not provide a detailed account here, as it would take too long, but in summary, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder approximately 2 years ago and received treatment for a period of time, but then ceased. I consulted with my attorney, who advised that this could complicate matters, as my client could potentially defend herself with a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity. However, the fact that she has been refusing treatment for some time could be advantageous to my case. My client's sister expressed remorse for her siblings' actions and indicated her willingness to assist with the case. The sister is still present to mitigate her sister's episodes for the sake of her niece. I inquired as to why Child Protective Services has not yet become involved. She stated that her parents are attempting to prevent that from occurring. I was unable to remain longer, having to depart before my sister was required to leave. We exchanged contact information and will communicate as needed. The hearing for the permanent restraining order is scheduled for this week, and it is my hope that it will proceed favorably. The sister indicated that my ex has revealed that she is uncertain about the identity of the child's biological father, as she engaged in sexual intercourse with 4 different males around the time of the child's conception. Upon learning this information, I experienced a profound sense of self-reproach for my own role in the situation. She was engaging in promiscuous sexual activity and I was unaware of this. The youngest of our group was feeling isolated and neglected, confined to a single room. She decided to emerge from her seclusion earlier than anticipated, coinciding with the commencement of academic studies. I am currently experiencing a need for extended periods of rest, but I am grateful that everyone is doing well. I will now proceed to discuss my former partner and the anxiety that I was experiencing at the time. The levels of distress I was experiencing were considerable. While they have since decreased, they remain relatively elevated. Following a period of approximately 2 weeks during which there was no communication from her, I received a call informing me that she had attempted to cash a fraudulent check in my name. I am uncertain how she obtained my bank details, but as with the documents from the fertility clinic, the check was clearly a forgery. The clerk was not deceived. She was promptly apprehended and is currently undergoing psychiatric treatment. The duration of her incarceration is uncertain, but upon release, she will face trial for check fraud. Based on the information available, her prospects appear unfavorable. Conversely, her parents are aware of my intention to expose her forgery and the evidence I possess. Another forgery crime was perpetrated by the accused. The parents of the accused implored me not to proceed with the prosecution, citing the potential for a longer sentence for their daughter. While this may be a controversial decision, I made an agreement with the parents. They will inform all individuals whom the accused deceived about my identity of the truth. I am not currently prepared to address this matter, so I consented to the agreement. Thus far, it appears to be an effective solution. Regarding the girl, I am pleased to report that she is currently residing with my former spouse. I will not provide a detailed account of the circumstances, but it appears that there is no foreseeable opportunity for my former spouse to regain custody of her. Despite the lack of direct involvement, I informed my former spouse that should her parents attempt to reclaim the girl, I would offer my assistance. Additionally, my wife and I are gradually distancing ourselves from my mother. My ex-in-law has informed me that his friendship with the cousin was merely a coincidence. They both exploited this to their advantage. The cousin and aunt have used my ex's fossils to retaliate against me. They allege that my ex works harder than they do, yet earns less money than them. They consider this to be unfair.